already? Oh.
Yeah. But it's exactly. No, I get you. Yeah, exactly. Those words. You're filled. You're fulfilled. What else do you want?
Welcome, everyone. I think this is kind of the crowd we're going to have. The room echoes quite a bit. So Leon had a great idea. Let's bring the cushions a little closer. For those of you moving seats, try not to drag them. Pick them up and move them closer. And maybe leave one more cushion here next to... Oh, wait. Is there an extra cushion someone can throw over here? Just in case we need another cushion, someone who comes in late. Just toss it over here in case anyone gets here late. So feel free to get a little closer. That way we can hear each other a little better. Good, so welcome. This is our last Buddhism 101 for the year, but we will continue again probably first week of February 2023. All right. And we'll be discussing today will be the third Noble Truth. And then starting in February, we'll start with the fourth Noble Truth, which is the Eightfold Path. And we'll just every month for the next 8 months take one of the Eightfold Path and discuss them. Today then is our usual Dharma service. What we will be doing is we will have instructions. I'll give you instructions on meditation. Then we'll do 10 minutes of meditation, followed then by a Dharma talk. And after the Dharma talk, we'll just have a discussion. Ask questions, comments, or whatever. All right. It's good to see all of you here. It's good. Welcome. I know this is your first time here, so it's great to have you here with us. Instructions on meditation. So the form of meditation that we practice here, the instructions I usually give is to focus on the breath. This technique of focusing on the breath has been used for thousands of years. I want to mix up the instructions a little bit here today. I want you to think of your breathing as a practice in non-attachment and non-aversion. When you breathe in, you don't hold the breath. If you do, eventually you'll pass out. Right? That's attachment. And when you breathe out, you're expelling the carbon dioxide, but you're not like pushing or keeping the carbon dioxide away. And if you never breathe in again, you'll pass out. Instead, there's this constant flow. Breathing in, breathing out. Non-attachment, I let go of the breath. Non-aversion, I allow the breath to enter back in me. The air around us has both what we need, oxygen, and what we don't need, pollution and pollen, damn allergies, right? And yet we breathe it in and we breathe it out. And the healthier the body is, the better we can protect ourselves from the virus, the bacteria in the air, the pollutants. Heck, from a different perspective, oxygen is actually quite toxic. Oxygen is corrosive. Oxygen is responsible for a mass extinction that happened on this earth. It was a time on our planet that carbon dioxide was the primary gas. And some new creature evolved that produced oxygen as waste, changed the whole environment, and a mass extinction occurred. And it made way then for us. But we need that oxygen, however toxic or corrosive it is. We thrive on it. Breathing in, I do not attach to the breath. Breathing out, I'm not averse to what's in the air. And just be part of that flow. So as you breathe in today, focus on the breath. If it helps you, breathing in, I'm not averse to what's in the air. Breathing out, I'm not attached to the breath. That's a way of practicing, that this is a flow in life that we need to achieve. The other practices, then, if that one does not work for you, is to simply either count the breaths to 10 and start over at 1. Focus on the sensation of breathing, how it feels to breathe and to exhale. And to use a mantra, a gatha, a word or a phrase that you repeat over and over again, synchronized with the breath. So try any of those practices tonight. After then, the 10-minute meditation, like I said, we'll do our Dharma talk, and today's Dharma talk will be on the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, that there is a cessation to suffering. I'll review a little bit the first two noble truths, and then I'll continue on with the third noble truth today. And then we'll have discussion, so any questions, comments, have them ready. Good. Get settled in, get in a comfortable position. Not so comfortable that you fall asleep, but not so uncomfortable that it distracts you. So the first teaching of the Buddha, shortly after his awakening, was that of the Four Noble Truths. We covered the first one. In life there is suffering. Not that life is suffering, just that in life there is suffering. And one of the implications of that is inherent in the fabric of the universe is suffering. So it's normal for you to suffer. It's not pleasant, we don't want it, but it's part of the universe that we live in, and we, as manifestations of this universe, will experience suffering. The second noble truth then was the cause of suffering, and the cause of that suffering was our striving, longing, our desires, our wishing for, our wanting. So our desires, what we are wanting, is the source of our suffering. And then the third noble truth, which we discuss today, is that there is an end to suffering, if you want it. There is a cessation to suffering. And this noble truth is, from my perspective, the message of hope. So far, the first one is, hey, things are crappy, and you're at fault for the crap in your life. That's for the first two noble truths I've been so far. And now the third noble truth is telling us, hey, but there's a way out. There's a way to end this. There's a way to stop. So for me, this is the message of hope. The third noble truth, the underlying message is hope. And I wanted to focus on two things then, today, both related to the third noble truth. One is, what is hope? And two, what is happiness? What is it that we're striving for if we're ending suffering? Which are related to the questions I asked earlier. First, let's talk about hope. Hope is made up of three parts. And listen to these three parts and think about the moment you felt hopeless. All right? And see if you can identify what was missing. Hope requires three things. One is the goal. What is it that you're hoping for? If you have nothing to hope for, if there's nothing ahead of you, you'll feel hopeless. Two is the pathway. Do you have ways of getting to that goal? Can you see how you can achieve this goal? Or does it not seem like you can achieve this at all? In which case then, you feel hopeless. Or three, efficacy. Do I feel that I can follow the pathways towards this goal? Do I have the ability, the strength, the courage to follow the pathways needed to get to the goal? So those are your three components of hope. And if any one of those is missing, you feel hopeless. I was talking to Leon and saying one of the times when many of us can feel hopeless is after a bad breakup. I'll never find love. What's wrong with me? Right? It's torture. And the goal is I want to find a loved one. The pathway, I don't see how I can do it. Right? I'm just broken up and I don't see any way I'll ever be able to love again. Or three, what's wrong with me? I can't follow any pathways to love. There's nothing I can do to love. And so you feel hopeless. Then something happens. You either find a new pathway or you learn to stop hating yourself so much, right? And you're back on the warpath again, trying to find another partner in life. So that's hope. And the Buddha, when he talks about suffering, gives us the three. The goal is cessation of suffering, or nirvana. Okay? The pathway that's the Eightfold Path that we'll talk about starting February. And then the efficacy, can I do this? That's when you hear the message that you're already a Buddha to be. That you're not developing into a Buddha, you are already a Buddha. It's kind of covered up with a lot of muck. And you're slowly uncovering this muck. And so you already have everything you need to follow the pathways. So the third noble truth. also has a second underlying message. So we have this message of hope. But the Buddha is saying, hey, there's a way out of this. And if you're asking, what is it? Like most of us are, then underlying assumption of that question, what is it? What is the way out of this? Is the assumption that you don't have the full story. That your narrative is incomplete. That your thoughts about how to get out of this suffering are missing something. I asked you to think about what is your definition of happiness and what are the things that make you happy. And if all those things were true, why aren't you happy now? The answer, your story, your definition is incomplete. You have part of the answer, or you may have a distorted part of the answer, or you may have a wrong part of the answer. But your definition of happiness, your definition of what makes you happy, is incomplete. If it were complete, if you had the answer, you would be happy. You'd be the Buddha. You'd be here teaching, hopefully, and helping me achieve enlightenment, helping all of us achieve enlightenment. But instead, all of us here are struggling with incomplete narratives, incomplete stories, incomplete answers, and we're seeking for more. It's telling that when we ask the question, what makes me happy? Rarely do we ever say peace. Peace of mind, peace of heart, tranquility, stillness, silence. Instead we say, oh, a party, a good meal, a loving relationship that's all passionate. We have all of these things that we mention that make us happy, and yet that happiness does not last. It's temporary. And we're suffering again shortly after. Again, because our narrative is incomplete, imperfect. I like the idea of happiness is peace for multiple reasons. One, I don't know what nirvana is. And every time I ask an enlightened person what nirvana is, or a wise person, since I've not met, I don't think, an enlightened person, they can never give me the answer of what nirvana is. All they can tell me is it's something that can't be described in English. You have to experience it yourself. Well, gee, thanks. So, it helped me in my practice to consider peace as one of those milestones towards nirvana. If I can achieve peace, then I'm closer to nirvana, closer to that answer, closer to a more complete narrative. As I was preparing for today's talk, I was like, when was the last time, or when is the time that I felt most at peace? And I can remember two incidents. One was I was in meditation and I was so, I don't know what it was, but this peace just felt so good. I didn't even want to breathe because breathing was going to disturb the peace. And I was okay with not breathing for a while. It felt good. Of course, I breathed again, otherwise I wouldn't be here with you. The second, or the other time I was thinking about is the one time I was in the mountains, in the snow. No civilization nearby. And the snow has this effect of muffling all sounds. It's a silence you don't find very many places. And it's so still, so quiet. I use those moments of deep peace that I've experienced to inspire then what I'm trying to achieve throughout my day, what I'm trying to achieve throughout my life. That stability, that stillness, that quietness. All right, I've experienced it once, twice. How can I cultivate that so that I can have more peace? What I have found, what I think many other Buddhists have found, is that ironically, the more peace you cultivate, the more joy you feel, and that joy leads to more happiness. So this joy is different from happiness because the joy is coming from within. It's not dependent on a really good song, a really good lover, a really good meal. It's not dependent on any of those things. It's just something that wells up from within. It's joy. A joy of life, a joy of living, a joy of being. And those are the people you see who are always smiling and laughing. All right? I picked up a bad habit because of this. When I see myself suffering or someone else suffering, I laugh or I smile. I've learned not to laugh. It's just this idea of how absurd life is that we suffer this way. And so that's why I smile. And it's gotten me in trouble with my wife and my kids. But I tried to explain it to them. But, unless they've experienced that peace and that joy and enjoyment of the absurdity of life, the acceptance that life is, inherent in life is suffering, and so that's okay. Then now I can approach those moments, not all moments, not every time, but I have my ability every once in a while to approach those moments of suffering with, fuck it. That's just how life is. And I'm going to deal. It's much more enjoyable to have a good chuckle at your own absurdities than it is to be beating yourself up. How foolish I am, how stupid I am. I'm an idiot, I'm worthless. I laugh, and it makes life a lot more bearable. And that's where that peace comes in. When you are at peace, and I'm not at peace all the time, so I don't want to make it sound like I am this peace monster that I'm, bringing peace throughout the world, spreading peace. Here, have some peace. Peace for you too. Ask my wife, ask my children. I have my moments of anger and sadness and despair still. But because I cultivate more peace, I have less of those things in my life. So that's the goal, at least for right now. Cultivate peace so you have a little less suffering in your life. Cultivate peace so you can laugh at the absurdity of life. Cultivate some more peace so that you're not as rattled when you watch the news. When you watch the news and you feel despair, remind yourself, I don't have the full story, I don't have the full narrative, and that's why I'm suffering. When you have your heart broken, remind yourself the reason I'm suffering is because I don't have the full story. I don't have the right narrative. It's incomplete. I still have more to learn. And as you grow in wisdom, as you grow in experience and knowledge, as you grow in peace, it doesn't make any more sense, but you're okay with it. Another benefit, and I won't touch too much more on this, but another benefit of peace is, think of if you were to pick up, say, water from a river that's kind of flowing kind of quickly. If you just grab a cup, a clear glass of water, and just let it sit there, the sediment starts to settle at the bottom of the cup and the water clears up. That's what peace does. It allows all the muck and pollution in your mind to settle. And it offers clarity. And so the more clarity you have, the easier it is to move, to make decisions, to find out what is the path and what are the strengths I bring to it so that I can get closer to the goal of nirvana or peace or joy or happiness, whatever you select for yourself. That's the message of hope. That to me is one of the important messages of the Third Noble Truth. Thank you. So, open it up. Thoughts, comments, insights. As our Master Quan Tri says, emotional outbursts. I've actually used that in therapy. Yeah, I'll be doing therapy for patients, and I'll say, any thoughts, comments, emotional outbursts?
Those are okay too.
Yeah.
What's he wish for?
I know, I'm waiting for one of them to go, ah!
I think I see the message of hope as kind of that pivot point. The first two, where we're acknowledging that suffering really is happening. It's not just some fuzzy thing out there. We start getting to know it. But it's like, I don't know, like you've been out in the woods and you stepped in a bear trap, right? And somebody shot you with a gun and some other things, and they're trying to make you well, but as long as your foot's in that bear trap, you don't have the capacity to assess the situation. So I think the message of hope for me is at that point when you realize that, yes, all this suffering is happening, and there's a way there, but, and I think the hope just says, oh, there's a way from here to get from here to there. It's connected. Because we're turning kind of from a negative way of looking and feeling about things through habit to a more positive and natural acceptance of things just as they are.
Mm-hmm. Breathing in, I accept it, the air as it is. Breathing out, I set it free.
Alex, I would be curious to know, like as a psychologist, how you conceptualize the will as it relates to suffering, change, creating circumstances of change deliberately in your life versus having them happen and then accepting them.
So I've used this analogy before, and so I'll use it again. For me, will is that influence I have on a spinning top, and I'm the spinning top. And the thing is that the spinning top, is on a platform that's unstable, and there's a lot of wind blowing from different directions. And so this spinning top is subject to the tilt of the platform it's on and how strong and what direction the wind is blowing. But every once in a while, occasionally, the top is able to stay upright and still, and that's when I have the most influence. That's when my willpower has the most effect. And that's when I'm more able to see my influence and my ability to choose. But I'm also still a victim of karma, past decisions. That's the wind, that's the tilt, upbringing, genetics, the universe, the earth, the politics. All those are the things that create the instability in the top. And I don't have control, but I have influence. Here's another image I use when it comes to will and decision making. I used to do whitewater kayaking. And one of the things about whitewater kayaking is you quickly learn you cannot control the river. Once you're in the rapids, You can influence and try to shoot for the space between the rocks, and every once in a while you judge wrong. And you're going to hit the rock. And the interesting thing is that your impulse when you're about to hit the rock is to lean away. But that's the worst thing to do, because once you hit the rock, it'll tip you completely over, and you're in the waters in the whitewater rapids with lots of other rocks. Ironically, what you're supposed to do when you're in the whitewaters kayaking is you lean towards the rock, so that when you hit the rock, it pushes you upright, and then you keep going. You have no control over the river. You have an oar, and your boat, and your waist, and your strength. You can influence the direction you go, but sometimes you're just going to hit a rock. Does that kind of explain will and choice? I think control is a delusion. I think we have influence. We can influence the path, but we're still subject to all these other variables that we are not aware of.
Thank you.
So, in the context of how you were talking about peace, what is not peace, or what is the antithesis of peace?
For me, it's 48 years of life. You know, we're so used to the antithesis of peace that those 2 moments I mentioned of peace were memorable. Does that make sense? We're living the antithesis of peace every day. The goal is to make those 2 moments of peace from my past the norm.
But because you experience it, you know that it exists.
Exactly.
You aspire.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been looking forward to this week to find out, like, the message of hope, right? Like, what's the good part? And I find myself feeling slightly disappointed that the answer lies in being peaceful, because I'm very bad at it and I rarely have it, and I am extremely like type A, like go, control. So I have a lot of work to do, it sounds like.
All of us
That's a
do.
blessing. And all of us have that same
Yeah.
ability.
And that's the first step, is the insight. I have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you said yourself some things that you know contribute to it.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure.
Going back to four noble truths. So what exactly is the third noble truth? It doesn't say the peace. I mean, that's your definition.
It's this.
Everybody,
There is a
your own view.
Yeah. There is a cessation to suffering.
Yes.
That's the simplified
No,
version.
What exactly like says third noble truth?
The third noble truth.
Yes.
So the first one is there is suffering. Second, there is a cause to suffering. Third, there is an end to suffering. And then fourth is the Four Noble Truths, the prescription to how to do all that. And that's the simplified version. If you look it up, if you go through the sutras, you'll find more extended versions. It'll talk about different forms of cessations, different forms of nirvana, different things. But because we're Buddhism 101, I try to keep it simple. And I don't fully understand everything yet either. And so I teach what I know, and not what and I point out what I have left to learn.
Yes, the end of suffering doesn't mean happiness or peace or blah, blah, blah.
There's more to life than suffering. So it's just that the Buddha decided to focus on suffering. But there's a reason why he doesn't say life is suffering. And the fact that he never said that means that there's more to life than suffering. It's just that this Buddha, and according to certain traditions, there are multiple Buddhas, millions, trillions, billions of Buddhas. But this Buddha decided to focus on the topic of suffering for us.
I have a question. So just a little bit ago when you were answering his really good question was, like, you listed all those things like politics and all the things that make control a delusion, right? The influences. the sort of negative influences, it sounded like. But we said that the cause of suffering is ourselves. Well, what about all those other things you just listed?
The idea, and this is more, the idea of self, the idea of separation of self and other is a delusion. This idea, the concept that there is a separation between self and others is a delusion. And that's a much more advanced topic. That's the no self. So if you want to read about it, we talked about it once. This is when we did that exercise where we all were throwing balls of yarn, right? And so, and that you were just the area where all the lines were connecting, but you yourself don't exist. You're just a manifestation and arising of all these causes and effects that come together. So we use the concept of self or other or I or, politics out there, and then there's me, to conveniently try to communicate a lesson. But my words are just a finger pointing at the moon. That's another image.
Labels.
Yeah, they're labels, they're concepts. The idea is eventually to get to a level of understanding where you go beyond the concepts, where you experience these teachings at a deeper level. But we use words and we use concepts as tools, as pointing fingers, to get to that level.
I read a good analogy or metaphor for the Four Noble Truths. If you think about it like a patient and a doctor. So the patient is suffering. The patient begins to learn why and how, what's causing their suffering a little bit, and it just makes them feel even worse. So they finally go to the physician, and the physician says, you just don't understand everything. I went to school for a long time so I could understand this and help you. And so that visit with the physician is what gives you hope. You might have been hopeless walking into that office, but when you hear the message that I understand what's causing this in your body, and there's a plan, and if we follow that plan step by step, and we're really conscious about it, get to the end of that step, the likelihood is that your disease will be much far, be reduced or even gone. So to me, that just pops it into real, kind of stark understanding that the third noble truth, that's where you realize the physician's there and he's going to help you, and there's of course the physician is part of your own self, right? You're going to help yourself get through this.
Maybe if you're somebody that you think you know it all and you think you have all the answers, I would think that would cause more hopelessness, because like you say, if you accept that I don't have all the answers, wow, maybe there is a solution that I don't know about. But if you think
maybe I'm missing some
solutions,
information, right?
Well, then what's left? Yeah. That's it. There's no help for your disease or your diagnosis.
Right.
And there are people like that.
Oh, I know.
And when they experience a crisis that they cannot control or don't have the answer for, it's this emotional outburst, sort of a tantrum. They're just discombobulated and they fall apart because their delusion of control, the delusion of having all the answers, has been shattered.
So maybe in a way it's better to embrace, I don't know, all the answers. I don't know, because there's hope.
It's much healthier.
All the answers. Someone else might. Maybe you do, or you do. And if you think I know it all, and I have a problem, and I can't figure out the solution, then
there isn't one. If I can't think of it, there isn't one, right? Yeah. That's what our ignorance does to us. It keeps us trapped in that realm of cycling around and around.
The one thing we say that is everybody's own journey. It's related. The path to awakeness or path to end the suffering is different for everybody. It's not the same path, like by being happy or by doing a practice to achieve the peacefulness. It's different. So it's related.
But this prescription is the same for everyone.
Maybe not. That's the question. That's the $1 billion question.
Well, that'll be a good discussion to have after we've gone over the Eightfold Path.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's a very valid.
Yeah.
It's a good question to ask.
Yeah, it's a real good question.
Maybe in that sense, and we might have actually talked on this, I'm sure we did, that suffering seems in that sense like a gift. Like it's an urging towards a more peaceful way of living. It's a constant urge that's always there. It's waiting for you to take it and use it to lift you somewhere else.
There's the willpower.
Yeah.
Making that decision about positive action.
I don't always think of it as a gift. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I have the wisdom of seeing it as a gift later on. It's easier for me to see it as a tool. So it's a tool. But it can also be a gift. Like I can think of times that I have suffered greatly, and I'm glad I went through that because I'm a better person because of it. In that sense, the suffering is a gift. But there are times when I'm in the moment of suffering where it's just easier for me to, this is not a gift. And so it's easier for me to think this is a